Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This audiobook is shared for educational purposes only. The official book link is in the description. Please consider buying the original to support the author. You are listening to this complete audiobook, published exclusively on YouTube by Scriptum Sonus. Please subscribe for more high-quality audiobooks. John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men, Chapter 1. A few miles south of Soledad, the Salinas River drops in close to the hillside bank and runs deep and green. The water is warm too, for it has slipped twinkling over the yellow sands in the sunlight before reaching the narrow pool. On one side of the river, the golden foothill slopes curve up to the strong and rocky Gabilan Mountains, but on the valley side the water is lined with trees, willows fresh and green with every spring, carrying in their lower leaf junctures the debris of the winter's flooding, and sycamores with mottled, white, recumbent limbs and branches that arch over the pool. On the sandy bank under the trees, the leaves lie deep and so crisp that a lizard makes a great skittering if he runs among them. Rabbits come out of the brush to sit on the sand in the evening, and the damp flats are covered with the night tracks of coons, and with the spread pads of dogs from the ranches, and with the split-wedge tracks of deer that come to drink in the dark. There is a path through the willows and among the sycamores, a path beaten hard by boys coming down from the ranches to swim in the deep pool, and beaten hard by tramps who come wearily down from the highway in the evening to jungle up near water. In front of the low, horizontal limb of a giant sycamore, there is an ash pile made by many fires. The limb is worn smooth by men who have sat on it. Evening of a hot day started the little wind to moving among the leaves. The shade climbed up the hills toward the top. On the sandbanks, the rabbits sat as quietly as little gray, sculptured stones. And then from the direction of the state highway came the sound of footsteps on crisp sycamore leaves. The rabbits hurried noiselessly for cover. A stilted heron labored up into the air and pounded downriver. For a moment, the place was lifeless, and then two men emerged from the path and came into the opening by the green pool. They had walked in single file down the path, and even in the open one stayed behind the other. Both were dressed in denim trousers and in denim coats with brass buttons. Both wore black, shapeless hats, and both carried tight blanket rolls slung over their shoulders. The first man was small and quick, dark of face, with restless eyes and sharp, strong features. Every part of him was defined: small, strong hands, slender arms, a thin and bony nose. Behind him walked his opposite, a huge man, shapeless of face, with large, pale eyes with wide, sloping shoulders. And he walked heavily, dragging his feet a little, the way a bear drags his paws. His arms did not swing at his sides, but hung loosely. The first man stopped short in the clearing, and the follower nearly ran over him. He took off his hat and wiped the sweatband with his forefinger and snapped the moisture off. His huge companion dropped his blankets and flung himself down and drank from the surface of the green pool, drank with long gulps, snorting into the water like a horse. The small man stepped nervously beside him. "Lennie," he said sharply. "Lennie, for God's sakes, don't drink so much." Lennie continued to snort into the pool. The small man leaned over and shook him by the shoulder. "Lennie, you gonna be sick like you was last night." Lennie dipped his whole head under, hat and all, and then he sat up on the bank, and his hat dripped down on his blue coat and ran down his back. "Thaw's good," he said. "You drink some, George. You take a good big drink." He smiled happily. George unslung his bindle and dropped it gently on the bank. "I ain't sure it's good water," he said. "Looks kinda scummy." Lennie dabbed one, ate his big paw in the water, and wiggled his fingers so the water arose in little splashes. Rings widened across the pool to the other side and came back again. Lennie watched them go. "Look, George, look what I done." George knelt beside the pool and drank from his hand with quick scoops. "Tastes all right," he admitted. "Don't really seem to be running, though. You never oughta drink water when it ain't running, Lennie," he said hopelessly. "You'd drink out of a gutter if you was thirsty." He threw a scoop of water into his face and rubbed it about with his hand, under his chin and around the back of his neck. Then he replaced his hat, pushed himself back from the river, drew up his knees and embraced them. Lennie, who had been watching, imitated George exactly. He pushed himself back, drew up his knees, embraced them, looked over to George to see whether he had it just right. He pulled his hat down a little more over his eyes, the way George's hat was. George stared morosely at the water. The rims of his eyes were red with sun glare. He said angrily, We could just as well have rode clear to the ranch if that bastard bus driver knew what he was talking about. Jess, a little stretch down the highway, he says. Jess, a little stretch. God damn near 4 miles, that's what it was. Didn't want to stop at the ranch gate, that's what. Too goddamn lazy to pull up. Wonder he isn't too damn good to stop in Soledad at all. Kicks us out and says, Jess, a little stretch down the road. I bet it was more than 4 miles. Damn hot day. Lennie looked timidly over to him. George, yeah, what you want? Where we goin', George? The little man jerked down the brim of his hat and scowled over at Lennie. So yon forgot that already, did you? I gotta tell you again, do I? Jesus Christ, you're a crazy bastard. I forgot, Lennie said softly. I tried not to forget. Honest to God I did, George. Okay, I'll tell you again. I ain't got nothing to do. Might juice as well spend all my time telling you things and then you forget 'em and I tell you again. Tried and tried, said Lennie, but it didn't do no good. I remember about the rabbits, George. The hell with the rabbits. That's all you ever can remember is them rabbits. Okay, now you listen and this time you got to remember so we don't get in no trouble. You remember settin' in that gutter on Howard Street and watchin' that blackboard? Lennie's face broke into a delighted smile. Why sure, George, I remember that. But, what we do then, I remember some girls come by and you say, the hell with what I says, you remember about us goin' into Murray and Reddy's and they give us work cards and bus tickets. Oh, sure, George. I remember that now. His hands went quickly into his side coat pockets. He said gently, George, I ain't got mine. I must 'a' lost it. He looked down at the ground in despair. You never had none, you crazy bastard. I got both of 'em here. Think I'd let you carry your own work card? Lennie grinned with relief. I thought I put it in my side pocket. His hand went into the pocket again. George looked sharply at him. Would you take out that pocket? Ain't a thing in my pocket, Lennie said cleverly. I know there ain't. You got it in your hand. What you got in your hand hid in it? I ain't got nothin', George, honest. Come on, give it here. Lennie held his closed hand away from George's direction. It's only a mouse, George. A mouse, a live mouse? Juice, a dead mouse, George. I didn't kill it. Honest, I found it dead. Give it here, said George. Leave me have it, George. Give it here. Lennie's closed hand slowly obeyed. George took the mouse and threw it across the pool to the other side, among the brush. What you want of a dead mouse, anyways? I could pet it with my thumb while we walked along, said Lennie. Well, you ain't petting no mice while you walk with me. You remember where we're goin' now? Lennie looked startled, and then in embarrassment hid his face against his knees. I forgot again. Jesus Christ, George said resignedly. Well, look, we're gonna work on a ranch like the one we come from up north, in Weed. Oh, sure, I remember. In Weed. That ranch we're going to is right down there about a 1/4 mile. We're gonna go in and see the boss. Now, look, I'll give him the work tickets, but you ain't gonna say a word. You juice stand there and don't say nothing. If he finds out what a crazy bastard you are, we won't get no job, but if he sees you work before he hears you talk, we're set. You got that? Sure, George, sure I got it. Okay. Now when we go in to see the boss, what you gonna do? Lennie thought, his face grew tight with thought. I ain't gonna say nothin', juice gonna stand there. Good boy, that's swell. You say that over 2, 3 times so you sure won't forget it. Lennie droned to himself softly. I ain't gonna say nothin'. I ain't gonna say nothin'. I ain't gonna say nothin'. Okay, said George. And you ain't gonna do no bad things like you done in Weed, neither. Lennie looked puzzled. Like I done in Weed? Oh, so you forgot that too, did ya? Well, I ain't gonna remind ya, fear you do it again. A light of understanding broke on Lennie's face. They run us out Weed, he exploded triumphantly. Run us out, hell, said George disgustedly. We run, they was lookin' for us but they didn't catch us. Lennie giggled happily. I didn't forget that, you bet. George lay back on the sand and crossed his hands under his head, and Lennie imitated him, raising his head to see whether he were doing it right. God, you're a lot of trouble, said George. I could get along so easy and so nice if I didn't have you on my tail. I could live so easy and maybe have a girl. For a moment Lennie lay quiet, and then he said hopefully, We gonna work on a ranch, George. All right. You got that, but we're gonna. Another man shouted back. The sycamore limbs rustled under a little wind that died immediately. George, why ain't we going on to the ranch and get some supper? They got supper at the ranch. George rolled on his side. No reason at all for you. I like it here. Tomorrow we're gonna go to work. I seen thrashin' machines on the way down. That means we'll be bucking grain bags, bustin' a gut. Tonight I'm gonna lay right here and look up. I like it. Lennie got up on his knees and looked down at George. Ain't we gonna have no supper? Sure we are, if you gather up some dead willow sticks. I got 3 cans of beans in my bindle. You get a fire ready. I'll give you a match when you get the sticks together, then we'll heat the beans and have supper. Lennie said, I like beans with ketchup. Well, we ain't got no ketchup. You go get wood, and don't you fool around. It'll be dark before long. Lennie lumbered to his feet and disappeared in the brush. George lay where he was and whistled softly to himself. There were sounds of splashings down the river in the direction Lennie had taken. George stopped whistling and listened. Poor bastard, he said softly, and then went on whistling again. In a moment, Lennie came crashing back through the brush. He carried one small willow stick in his hand. George sat up. All right, he said brusquely, Jim that mouse. But Lennie made an elaborate pantomime of innocence. What mouse, George? I ain't got no mouse. George held out his hand. Come on, give it to me. You ain't puttin' nothing over. Lennie hesitated, backed away, looked wildly at the brush line as though he contemplated running for his freedom. George said coldly, You gonna give me that mouse or do I have to sock you? Give you what, George? You know goddamn well what. I want that mouse. Lennie reluctantly reached into his pocket. His voice broke a little. I don't know why I can't keep it. It ain't nobody's mouse. I didn't steal it. I found it lying right beside the road. George's hand remained outstretched imperiously. Slowly, like a terrier who doesn't want to bring a ball to its master, Lennie approached, drew back, approached again. George snapped his fingers sharply, and at the sound, Lennie laid the mouse in his hand. I wasn't doing nothing bad with it, George. Juice, strockin' it. George stood up and threw the mouse as far as he could into the darkening brush, and then he stepped to the pool and washed his hands. You crazy fool, don't you think I could see your feet was wet where you went across the river to get it? He heard Lennie's whimpering cry and wheeled about. Blubberin' like a baby? Jesus Christ. A big guy like you? Lennie's lip quivered and tears started in his eyes. Aw, Lennie. George put his hand on Lennie's shoulder. I ain't talkin' it away juice for meanness. That mouse ain't fresh, Lennie, and besides, you've broke it pettin' it. You get another mouse that's fresh, and I'll let you keep it a little while. Lennie sat down on the ground and hung his head dejectedly. I don't know where there is no other mouse. I remember a lady used to give 'em to me, ever one she got. But that lady ain't here, George scoffed. Lady, don't even remember who that lady was. That was your own Aunt Clara, and she stopped givin' 'em to ya. You always killed 'em. Lennie looked sadly up at him. They was so little, he said, apologetically. I'd pet 'em, and pretty soon they bit my fingers and I pinched their heads a little and then they was dead, because they was so little. I wished we'd get the rabbits pretty soon, George. They ain't so little. The hell with the rabbits. And you ain't to be trusted with no live mice. Your Aunt Clara give you a rubber mouse and you wouldn't have nothing to do with it. It wasn't no good to pet, said Lennie. The flame of the sunset lifted from the mountain tops, and dusk came into the valley, and a half-darkness came in among the willows and the sycamores. A big carp rose to the surface of the pool, gulped air, and then sank mysteriously into the dark water again, leaving widening rings on the water. Overhead the leaves whisked again and little puffs of willow cotton blew down and landed on the pool's surface. You gonna get that wood? George demanded. There's plenty right up against the back of that sycamore. Floodwater wood. Now you get it. Lennie went behind the tree and brought out a litter of dried leaves and twigs. He threw them in a heap on the old ash pile and went back for more and more. It was almost night now. A dove's wings whistled over the water. George walked to the fire pile and lighted the dry leaves. The flame cracked up among the twigs and fell to work. George undid his bindle and brought out 3 cans of beans. He stood them about the fire, close in against the blaze, but not quite touching the flame. There's enough beans for 4 men, George said. Lennie watched him from over the fire. He said patiently, I like 'em with ketchup. Well, we ain't got any, George exploded. Whatever we ain't got, that's what you want. God Almighty, if I was alone, I could live so easy. I could go get a job and work, and no trouble. No mess, all, and when the end of the month come I cowl take my $50 and go into town and get whatever I want. Why, I could stay in a cat house night. I could eat any place I want, hotel, or in place, and order any damn thing I could think of. And I could do all that every damn month. Get a gallon of whiskey, or sit in a pool room and play cards or shoot pool. Lennie knelt and looked over the fire at the angry George. And Lennie's face was drawn with terror. And what I got? George went on furiously. I got you. You can't keep a job and you lose me ever job I get. Juice keep me shovin' all over the country all the time, and that ain't the worst. You get in trouble, you do bad things, and I got him get you out. His voice rose nearly to a shout. You crazy son of a bitch, you keep me in hot water all the time. He took on the elaborate manner of little girls when they are mimicking one another. Juice wanted to feel that girl's dress Juice, wanted to pet it like it was a mouse. Well, how the hell did she know you Juice wanted to feel her dress? She jerks back and you hold on like it was a mouse. She yells and we got to hide in an irrigation ditch all day with guys looking for us, and we got to sneak out in the dark and get out of the country. All the time something like that, all the time. I wished I could put you in a cage with about 1,000,000 mice and let you have fun. His anger left him suddenly. He looked across the fire at Lennie's anguished face, and then he looked ashamedly at the flames. It was quite dark now, but the fire lighted the trunks of the trees and the curving branches overhead. Lennie crawled slowly and cautiously around the fire until he was close to George. He sat back on his heels. George turned the bean can so that another side faced the fire. He pretended to be unaware of Lennie so close beside him. George, very softly, no answer. George, what do you want? I was only foolin', George. I don't want no ketchup. I wouldn't eat no ketchup if it was right here beside me. If it was here, you could have some. But I wouldn't eat none, George. I'd leave it all for you. You could cover your beans with it, and I wouldn't touch none of it. George still stared morosely at the fire. When I think of the swell time I could have without you, I go nuts. I never get no peace. Lennie still knelt. He looked off into the darkness across the river. George, you want I should go away and leave you alone? Where the hell could you go? Well, I could go off in the hills there, some place I'd find a cave. Yeah, how'd you eat? You ain't got sense enough to find nothing to eat. I'd find things, George. I don't need no nice food with ketchup. I'd lay out in the sun and no hoodie'd hurt me, and if I found a mouse, I could keep it. Nobody'd take it away from me. George looked quickly and searchingly at him. I been mean, ain't I? If you want me, I can go off in the hills and find a cave. I can go away any time. No, look. I was juice foolin' Lennie, cause I want you to stay with me. Trouble with mice is you always kill 'em. He paused. Tell you what I'll do, Lennie. First chance I get, I'll give you a pup. Maybe you wouldn't kill it. That'd be better than mice. And you could pet it harder. Lennie avoided the bait. He had sensed his advantage. If you don't want me, you only juice got to say so, and I'll go off in those hills right there right up in those hills and live by myself. And I won't get no mice stole from me. George said, I want you to stay with me, Lennie. Jesus Christ, somebody'd shoot you for a coyote if you was by yourself. No, you stay with me. Your Aunt Clara wouldn't like you running off by yourself, even if she is dead. Lennie spoke craftily. Tell me like you done before. Tell you what? About the rabbits. George snapped. You ain't gonna put nothing over on me. Lennie pleads, come on, George. Tell me, please, George, like you done before. You get a kick out of that, don't you? All right, I'll tell you, and then we'll eat our supper. George's voice became deeper. He repeated his words rhythmically as though he had said them many times before. Guys like us, that work on ranches, are the loneliest guys in the world. They got no family. They don't belong no place. They come to a ranch and work up a stake, and then they go into town and blow their stake, and the first thing you know they're poundin' their tail on some other ranch. They ain't got nothing to look ahead to. Lennie was delighted. That's it. Now tell how it is with us. George went on. With us it ain't like that. We got a future. We got somebody to talk to that gives a damn about us. We don't have to sit in no bar room blowin' our jack juice because we got no place else to go. If them other guys gets in jail, they can rot for all anybody gives a damn. But not us. Lennie broke in. But not us. And why? Because I got you to look after me, and you got me to look after you, and that's why. He laughed delightedly. Go on now, George. You got it by heart. You can do it yourself. No, I forget some of the things. Tell about how it's gonna be. Okay, someday, we're gonna get the jack together, and we're gonna have a little house and a couple of acres and a cow and some pigs and live off the fat of the land, Lennie shouted. And have a rabbits. Go on, George. Tell about what we're gonna have in the garden and about the rabbits in the cages and about the rain in the winter and the stove and how thick the cream is in the milk like you can hardly cut it. Tell about that, George. Why don't you do it yourself? You know all of it. No, you tell it. It ain't the same if I tell it. Go on, George, how I get to tend the rabbits. Well, said George, we'll have a big vegetable patch and a rabbit hutch and chickens. And when it rains in the winter, we'll just say the hell with going to work, and we'll build up a fire in the stove and set around it and listen to the rain common down on the roof. Nuts. He took out his pocket knife. I ain't got time for no more. He drove his knife through the top of one of the bean cans, sawed out the top, and passed the can to Lennie. Then he opened a second can. From his side pocket, he brought out 2 spoons and passed one of them to Lennie. They sat by the fire and filled their mouths with beans and chewed mightily. A few beans slipped out of the side of Lennie's mouth. George gestured with his spoon. What you gonna say tomorrow when the boss asks you questions? Lennie stopped chewing and swallowed. His face was concentrated. I ain't gonna say a word. Good boy, that's fine, Lennie. Maybe you're gettin' better. When we get the couple of acres, I can let you tend the rabbits all right. Especially if you remember as good as that. Lennie choked with pride. I can remember, he said. George motioned with his spoon again. Look, Lennie. I want you to look around here. You can remember this place, can't you? The ranch is about a 1/4 mile up that way. Just follow the river. Sure, said Lennie. I can remember this. Didn't I remember about not gonna say a word? Course you did. Well, look, Lennie, if you juice happen to get in trouble like you always done before, I want you to come right here and hide in the brush. Hide in the brush, said Lennie slowly. Hide in the brush till I come for you. Can you remember that? Sure I can, George. Hide in the brush till you come. But you ain't gonna get in no trouble, because if you do, I won't let you tend the rabbits. He threw his empty bean can off into the brush. I won't get in no trouble, George. I ain't gonna say a word. Okay, bring your bindle over here by the fire. It's gonna be nice sleepin' here. Lookin' up and the leaves don't build up no more fire. We'll let her die down. They made their beds on the sand, and as the blaze dropped from the fire, the sphere of light grew smaller. The curling branches disappeared, and only a faint glimmer showed where the tree trunks were. From the darkness, Lennie called, George, you asleep? No, what do you want? Let's have different color rabbits, George. Sure we will, George said sleepily. Red and blue and green rabbits, Lennie. Millions of 'em. Furry ones, George, like I seen in the fair in Sacramento. Sure, furry ones. 'Cause I can juice as well go away, George, and live in a cave. You can juice as well go to hell, said George. Shut up now. The red light dimmed on the coals. Up the hill from the river, a coyote hammered, and a dog answered from the other side of the stream. The sycamore leaves whispered in a little night breeze. Chapter 2, the bunkhouse was a long, rectangular building. Inside, the walls were whitewashed and the floor unpainted. In 3 walls there were small, square windows, and in the 4th, a solid door with a wooden latch. Against the walls were 8 bunks, 5 of them made up with blankets, and the other 3 showing their burlap ticking. Over each bunk, there was nailed an apple box with the opening forward so that it made 2 shelves for the personal belongings of the occupant of the bunk. And these shelves were loaded with little articles soap and talcum powder, razors and those Western magazines ranch men love to read and scoff at and secretly believe. And there were medicines on the shelves and little vials, combs. And from nails on the box sides, a few neckties. Near one wall there was a black cast iron stove, its stovepipe going straight up through the ceiling. In the middle of the room stood a big square table littered with playing cards, and around it were grouped boxes for the players to sit on. At about 10 o'clock in the morning, the sun threw a bright dust-laden bar through one of the side windows, and in and out of the beam flies shot like rushing stars. The wooden latch raised. The door opened, and a tall, stoop-shouldered old man came in. He was dressed in blue jeans, and he carried a big push broom in his left hand. Behind him came George, and behind George, Lennie. The boss was expectin' you last night, the old man said. He was sore as hell when you wasn't here to go out this morning. He pointed with right arm, and out of the sleeve came a round stick like wrist, but no hand. You can have them 2 beds there, he said, indicating 2 bunks near the stove. George stepped over and threw his blankets due on the burlap sack of straw that was a mattress. He looked into his box shelf and then picked a small yellow can from it. Say, "What the hell's this?" "I don't know," said the old man. "Says positively kills lice, roaches, and other scourges. What the hell kind of bed you giving us anyways? We don't want no pants rabbits." The old swamper shifted his broom and held it between his elbow and his side while he held out his hand for the can. He studied the label carefully. "Tell you what," he said finally, "last guy that had thy's bed was a blacksmith hell of a nice fella and clean a guy as you want to meet. Used to wash his hands even after he ate." "Then how come he got graybacks?" George working up a slow anger. Lennie put his bindle on the neighboring bunk and sat down. He watched George with open mouth. "Tell you what," said the old swamper. "This here blacksmith name of Whitey was the kind of guy that would put that stuff around even if there wasn't no bugs, just to make sure, see. Tell you what he used to do at meals, he'd peel his boiled potatoes, and he'd take out ever little spot, no matter what kind, before he'd eat it. And if there was a red splotch on an egg, he'd scrape it off. Finally quit about the food. That's the kind of guy he was, clean. Used ta dress up Sundays even when he wasn't going no place, put on a necktie even, and then set in the bunkhouse." "I ain't so sure," said George skeptically. "What did you say he quit for?" The old man put the yellow can in his pocket, and he rubbed his bristly white whiskers with his knuckles. "Why, he just quit the way a guy will, says it was the food, just wanted to move. Didn't give no other reason but the food. Just says, gimme my time one night, the way any guy would." George lifted his tick and looked underneath it. He leaned over and inspected the sacking closely. Immediately Lennie got up and did the same with his bed. Finally, George seemed satisfied. He unrolled his bindle and put things on the shelf, his razor and bar of soap, his comb and bottle of pills, his liniment and leather wristband. Then he made his bed up neatly with blankets. The old man said, "I guess the boss'll be out here in a minute. He was sure burned when you wasn't here this morning. Come right in when we was eatin' breakfast and says, 'Where the hell's them new men?' And he give the stable buck hell, too." George patted a wrinkle out of his bed and sat down. "Give the stable buck hell?" he asked. "Sure, you see the stable buck's a nigger." "Nigger, huh?" "Yeah, nice fella too, got a crooked back where a horse kicked him. The boss gives him hell when he's mad. But the stable buck don't give a damn about that. He reads a lot, got books in his room." "What kind of a guy is the boss?" George asked. "Well, he's a pretty nice fella. Gets pretty mad sometimes, but he's pretty nice. Tell you what he done Christmas. Brang a gallon of whiskey right in here and say, 'Drink hearty, boys. Christmas comes but once a year.' The hell he did, whole gallon?" "Yes, sir. Jesus, we had fun. They let the nigger come in that night. Little Skinner name of Smithy took after the nigger. Done pretty good, too. The guys wouldn't let him use his feet, so the nigger got him. If he coulda used his feet, Smitty says he woulda killed the nigger. The guys said on account of the niggers got a crooked back, Smitty can't use his feet." He paused in relish of the memory. "After that the guys went into Soledad and raised hell, didn't go in there. I ain't got the poop no more." Lennie was just finishing making his bed. The wooden latch raised again and the door opened. A little stocky man stood in the open doorway. He wore blue jean trousers, a flannel shirt, a black, unbuttoned vest, and a black coat. His thumbs were stuck in his belt, on each side of a square steel buckle. On his head was a soiled brown Stetson hat, and he wore high-heeled boots and spurs to prove he was not a laboring man. The old swamper looked quickly at him, and then shuffled to the door, rubbing his whiskers with his knuckles as he went. "Them guys just come," he said, and shuffled past the boss and out the door. The boss stepped into the room with the short, quick steps of a fat-legged man. "I wrote Murray, and ready I wanted 2 men this morning. You got your work." Slips, George reached into his pocket and produced the slips and handed them to the boss. "It wasn't Murray and Reddy's fault. Says right here on the slip that you was to be here for work this morning." George looked down at his feet. "Bus driver give us a bum steer," he said. "We had to walk 10 miles, says we was here when we wasn't. We couldn't get no rides in the morning." The boss squinted his eyes. "Well, I had to send out the grain teams short 2 buckers. Won't do any good to go out now till after dinner." He pulled his time book out of his pocket and opened it where a pencil was stuck between the leaves. George scowled meaningfully at Lennie, and Lennie nodded to show that he understood. The boss licked his pencil. "What's your name?" "George Milton." "And what's yours?" George said. "His name's Lennie Small." The names were entered in the book. "L'see, this is the 20th, noon the 20th." He closed the book. "Where you boys been working?" "Up around weed," said George. "You too?" to Lennie. "Yeah, him too," said George. The boss pointed a playful finger at Lennie. "He ain't much of a talker, is he?" "No, he ain't, but he's sure a hell of a good worker." "Strong as a bull." Lennie smiled to himself. "Strong as a bull," he repeated. George scowled at him, and Lennie dropped his head in shame at having forgotten. The boss said suddenly, "Listen, Small." Lennie raised his head. "What can you do?" In a panic, Lennie looked at George for help. "He can do anything you tell him," said George. "He a good skinner. He can wrestle grain bags, drive cultivator. He can do anything. Just give him a try." The boss turned on George. "Then why don't you let him answer? What are you trying to put over?" George broke in loudly. "Oh, I ain't saying he's bright. He ain't, but I say he's a goddamn good worker. He can put up a 400-pound bale." The boss deliberately put the little book in his pocket. He hooked his thumbs in his belt and squinted one eye nearly closed. "Say, what you sellin'?" "Huh. I said what stake you got in this guy." "You talkin' his pay away from him?" "No, course I ain't. Why you think I'm sellin' him out?" "Well, I never seen one guy take so much trouble for another guy. I just like to know what your interest is." George said, "He's my cousin. I told his old lady I'd take care of him. He got kicked in the head by a horse when he was a kid. He's alright, just ain't bright, but he can do anything you tell him." The boss turned half away. "Well, God knows B don't need any brains to buck barley bags. Rut, don't you try to put nothing over, Milton. I got my eye on you. Why'd you quit and weed?" "Job was done," said George promptly. "What kind of job?" We was diggin' a cesspool." "All right, but don't try to put nothing over, 'cause you can't get away with nothing. I seen wise guys before. Go on out with the grain teams after dinner. They're pickin' up barley at the thrashing machine. Go out with Slim's team." "Slim? Yeah, big tall Skinner. You'll see him at dinner." He turned abruptly and went to the door, but before he went out, he turned and looked for a long moment at the two men. When the sound of his footsteps had died away, George turned on Lennie. "So you wasn't gonna say a word. You was gonna leave your big flapper shut and leave me do the talkin'. Damn near lost us the job." Lennie stared hopelessly at his hands. "I forgot, George." "Yeah, you forgot. You always forget, and I got to talk you out of it." He sat down heavily on the bunk. "Now he's got his eye on us. Now we got to be careful and not make no slips. You keep your big wrapper shut after this." He fell morosely silent. "George, what you want now?" "I wasn't kicked in the head with no horse, was I, George?" "Be a damn good thing if you was," George said viciously. "Save everybody a hell of a lot of trouble." "You said I was your cousin, George." "Well, that was a lie, and I'm damn glad it was. If I was a relative of yours, I'd shoot myself." He stopped suddenly, stepped to the open front door, and peered out. "Say, what the hell you doin' lightnin'?" The old man came slowly into the room. He had his broom in his hand, and at his heels there walked a drag-footed sheepdog, gray of muzzle, and with pale, blind old eyes. The dog struggled lamely to eye the side of the room and lay down, grunting softly to himself and licking his grizzled, moth-eaten coat. The swamper watched him until he was settled. "I wasn't listenin'. I was jus standin' in the shade a minute scratchin' my dog. I jus now finished swampin' out the wash house." "You was pockin' your big ears into our business," George said. "I don't like nobody to get nosy." The old man looked uneasily from George to Lennie, and then back. "I jus come there," he said. "I didn't hear nothing you guys was sayin'. I ain't interested in nothing you was sayin'. A guy on a ranch don't never listen nor he don't ask no questions." "Damn right he don't," said George, slightly mollified. "Not if he wants to stay. Workin' long." Rut, he was reassured by the swamper's defense. "Come on in and set down a minute," he said. "That's a hell of an old dog." "Yeah, I had him ever since he was a pup. God, he was a good sheepdog when he was younger." He stood his broom against the wall, and he rubbed his white, bristled cheek with his knuckles. "How'd you like the boss?" he asked. "Pretty good, seemed alright." "He's a nice fella," the swamper agreed. "You got to take him right." At that moment, a young man came into the bunkhouse. A thin young man with a brown face, with brown eyes and a head of tightly curled hair. He wore a work glove on his left hand, and like the boss, he wore high-heeled boots. "Seen my old man?" he asked. The swamper said, "He was here jus a minute ago, Curly. Went over to the cookhouse, I think." "I'll try to catch him," said Curly. His eyes passed over the new men and he stopped. He glanced coldly at George and then at Lennie. His arms gradually bent at the elbows and his hands closed into fists. He stiffened and went into a slight crouch. His glance was at once calculating and pugnacious. Lennie squirmed under the look and shifted his feet nervously. Curly stepped gingerly close to him. "You the new guys the old man was waitin' for?" "We just come in," said George. "Let the big gay talk." Lennie twisted with embarrassment. George said, "S'pose he don't want to talk?" Curly lashed his body around. "By Christ, he's gotta talk when he's spoke to. What the hell are you gettin' into it for?" "We travel together," said George coldly. "Oh, so it's that way." George was tense and motionless. "Yeah, it's that way." Lennie was looking helplessly to George for instruction. "And Jan won't let the big guy talk, is that it? He can talk if he wants to tell you anything." He nodded slightly to Lennie. "We jus come in," said Lennie softly. Curly stared levelly at him. "Well, next time you answer when you're spoke to." He turned toward the door and walked out, and his elbows were bent out a little. George watched him out, and then he turned back to the swamper. "Say, what the hell's he got on his shoulder? Lennie didn't do nothing to him." The old man looked cautiously at the door to make sure no one was listening. "That's the boss's son," he said quietly. "Curly's pretty handy. He done quite a bit in the ring. He's a lightweight and he's handy." "Well, let him be handy," said George. "He don't have to take after Lennie. Lennie didn't do nothing to him." "What's he got against Lennie?" the swamper considered. "Well, tell you what, Curly's like a lot of little guys. He hates big guys. He's all the time picking scraps with big guys. Kind of like he's mad at him because he ain't a big guy. You seen little guys like that, ain't you? Always scrappy." "Sure," said George. "I seen plenty tough little guys. But this Curly better not make no mistakes about Lennie. Lennie ain't handy, but this Curly punk is gonna get hurt if he messes around with Lennie." "Well, Curly's pretty handy," the swamper said skeptically. "Never did seem right to me. S'pose Curly jumps a big guy and licks him. Everybody says what a game guy Curly is. And s'pose he does the same thing and gets licked. Then everybody says the big guy ought to pick somebody his own size, and maybe they gang up on the big guy. Never did seem right to me. Seems like Curly ain't givin' nobody a chance." George was watching the door. He said ominously, "Well, he better watch out for Lennie. Lennie ain't no fighter, but Lennie's strong and quick, and Lennie don't know no rules." He walked to the square table and sat down on one of the boxes. He gathered some of the cards together and shuffled them. The old man sat down on another box. "Don't tell Curly I said none of this. He'd slew me. He just don't give a damn. Won't ever get canned 'cause his old man's the boss." George cut the cards and began turning them over, looking at each one and throwing it down on a pile. He said, "This guy Curly sounds like a son of a bitch to me. I don't like mean little guys." "Seems to me like he's worse lately," said the swamper. "He got married a couple of weeks ago. Wife lives over in the boss's house. Seems like he is cockiern ever since he got married." George grunted. "Maybe he's showin' off for his wife." The swamper warmed to his gossip. "You seen that glove on his left hand?" "Yeah." "I seen it. Well, that glove's full of Vaseline." "Vaseline? What the hell for?" "Well, I tell you what Curly says he's keepin' that hand soft for his wife." George studied the cards absorbedly. "That's a dirty thing to tell around," he said. The old man was reassured. He had drawn a derogatory statement from George. He felt safe now and bespoke more confidently. "Wait'll you see Curly's wife." George cut the cards again and put out a solitaire lay, slowly and deliberately. "Purty?" he asked casually. "Yeah, purty, but..." George studied his cards. "But what?" "Well, she got the eye." "Yeah, married 2 weeks and got the eye. Maybe that's why Curly's pants is full of ants. I seen her give Slim the eye. Slim's a jerkline skinner. Hell of a nice fella. Slim don't need to wear no high-heeled boots on a grain team. I seen her give Slim the eye. Curly never seen it. And I seen her give Carlson the eye." George pretended a lack of interest. "Looks like we was gonna have fun." The swamper stood up from his box. "Know what I think?" George did not answer. "Well, I think Curly's married, a tart." "He ain't the first," said George. "There's plenty done that." The old man moved toward the door, and his ancient dog lifted his head and peered about, and then got painfully to his feet to follow. "I gotta be settin' out the wash basins for the guys. The teams'll be in before long. You guys gonna buck barley?" "Yeah. You won't tell Curly nothing I said." "Hell no." Well, you look her over, mister. You see if she ain't a tart. He stepped out the door into the brilliant sunshine. George laid down his cards thoughtfully, turned his piles of 3. He built 4 clubs on his ace pile. The sun square was on the floor now, and the flies whipped through it like sparks. A sound of jingling harness and the croak of heavy-laden axles sounded from outside. From the distance came a clear call. Stable bucku, stable buck. And then, where the hell is that goddamn nigger? George stared at his solitaire lay, and then he flounced the cards together and turned around to Lennie. Lennie was lying down on the bunk watching him. Look, Lennie, this here ain't no setup. I'm scared. You gonna have trouble with that curly guy. I seen that kind before. He was kind of feelin' you out. He figures he's got you scared, and he's gonna take a sock at you the first chance he gets. Lennie's eyes were frightened. I don't want no trouble, he said plaintively. Don't let him sock me, George. George got up and went over to Lennie's bunk and sat down on it. I hate that kind of bastard, he said. I seen plenty of 'em. Like the old guy says, Curly don't take no chances. He always wins, he thought for a moment. If he tangles with you, Lennie, we're gonna get the can. Don't make no mistake about that. He's the boss's son. Look, Lennie, you try to keep away from him, will you? Don't never speak to him. If he comes in here, you move clear to the other side of the room. Will you do that, Lennie? I don't want no trouble, Lennie mourned. I never done nothing to him. Well, that won't do you no good if Curly wants to plug himself up for a fighter. Just don't have nothing to do with him. Will you remember? Sure, George, I ain't gonna say a word. The sound of the approaching grain teams was louder, thud of big hooves on hard ground, drag of brakes, and the jingle of trace chains. Men were calling back and forth from the teams. George, sitting on the bunk beside Lennie, frowned as he thought Lennie asked timidly, You ain't mad, George? I ain't mad at you. I'm mad at this here curly bastard. I hoped we was gonna get a little steak together, maybe $100. His tone grew decisive. You keep away from Curly, Lennie. Sure I will, George, I won't say a word. Don't let him pull you in butt. If the son of Abich socks you, let I am have it. Let I am have what, George? Never mind, never mind. I'll tell you when. I hate that kind of a guy. Look, Lennie, if you get in any kind of trouble, you remember what I told you to do? Lennie raised up on his elbow, his face contorted with thought. Then his eyes moved sadly to George's face. If I get in any trouble, you ain't gonna let me tend the rabbits. That's not what I meant. You remember where we slept last night? Down by the river? Yeah, I remember. Oh, sure I remember. I go there and hide in the brush. Hide till I come for you. Don't let nobody see you. Hide in the brush by the river. Say that over. Hide in the brush by the river, down in the brush by the river. If you get in trouble, if I get in trouble. A brake screeched outside. A call came, stable buck. Oh, stable buck, George said. Say it over to yourself, Lennie, so you won't forget it. Both men glanced up, for the rectangle of sunshine in the doorway was cut off. A girl was standing there looking in. She had full, rouged lips and wide-spaced eyes, heavily made up. Her fingernails were red. Her hair hung in little rolled clusters, like sausages. She wore a cotton house dress and red mules, on the insteps of which were little bouquets of red ostrich feathers. I'm lookin' for Curly, she said. Her voice had a nasal, brittle quality. George looked away from her and then back. He was in here a minute ago, but he went. Oh, she put her hands behind her back and leaned against the door frame so that her body was thrown forward. You're the new fellas that just come, ain't ya? Yeah. Lennie's eyes moved down over her body, and though she did not seem to be looking at Lennie, she bridled a little. She looked at her fingernails. Sometimes Curly's in here, she explained. George said brusquely, Well, he ain't now. If he ain't, I guess I better look someplace else, she said playfully. Lennie watched her, fascinated. George said, If I see him, I'll pass the word you was looking for him. She smiled archly and twitched her body. Nobody can't blame a person for lookin', she said. There were footsteps behind her going by. She turned her head. Hi, Slim, she said. Slim's voice came through the door. Hi, good-lookin'. I'm tryin' to find Curly, Slim. Well, you ain't tryin' very hard. I seen him goin' in your house. She was suddenly apprehensive. Bye, boys, she called into the bunkhouse, and she hurried away. George looked around at Lennie. Jesus, what a tramp, he said. So that's what Curly picks for a wife. She's purty, said Lennie defensively. Yeah, and she's sure hidden it. Curly got his work ahead of him. Bet she'd clear out for $20. Lennie still stared at the doorway where she had been. Gosh, she was purty. He smiled admiringly. George looked quickly down at him, and then he took him by an ear and shook him. Listen to me, you crazy bastard, he said fiercely. Don't you even take a look at that bitch. I don't care what she says and what she does. I seen 'em poison before, but I never seen no piece of jail bait worse than her. You leave her be. Lennie tried to disengage his ear. I never done nothing, George. No, you never. But when she was standin' in the doorway showin' her legs, you wasn't lookin' the other way, neither. I never meant no harm, George. Honest, I never. Well, you keep away from her 'cause she's a rat trap if I ever seen one. You let Curly take the rap. He let himself in for it. Glove full of Vaseline, George said disgustedly. And I bet he's eaten raw eggs and written to the patent medicine houses. Lennie cried out suddenly, I don't like this place, George. This ain't no good place. I wanna get outta here. We gotta keep it till we get a steak. We can't help it, Lennie. We'll get out juice as soon as we can. I don't like it no better than you do. He went back to the table and set out a new solitaire hand. No, I don't like it, he said. For 2 bits I'd shove out of here. If we can get juice, a few dollars in the poke will shove off and go up the American River and pan gold. We can make maybe a couple of dollars a day there, and we might hit a pocket. Lennie leaned eagerly toward him. Let's go, George. Let's get out of here. It's mean here. We gotta stay, George said shortly. Shut up now. The guys'll be comin' in. From the washroom nearby came the sound of running water and rattling basins. George studied the cards. Maybe we oughta wash up, he said, but we ain't done nothing to get dirty. A tall man stood in the doorway. He held a crushed Stetson hat under his arm while he combed his long, black, damp hair straight back. Like the others, he wore blue jeans and a short denim jacket. When he had finished combing his hair, he moved into the room, and he moved with a majesty only achieved by royalty and master craftsmen. He was a jerkline skinner, the prince of the ranch, capable of driving 10, 16, even 20 mules with a single line to the leaders. He was capable of killing a fly on the wheeler's butt with a bullwhip without touching the mule. There was a gravity in his manner and a quiet so profound that all talk stopped when he spoke. His authority was so great that his word was taken on any subject, be it politics or love. This was Slim, the jerkline skinner. His hatchet face was ageless. He might have been 35 or 50. His ear heard more than was said to him, and his slow speech had overtones not of thought, but of understanding beyond thought. His hands, large and lean, were as delicate in their action as those of a temple dancer. He smoothed out his crushed hat, creased it in the middle, and put it on. He looked kindly at the two in the bunkhouse. It's brighter'n a bitch outside, he said gently. Can't hardly see nothing in here, you the new guys. Just come, said George. Gonna buck barley? That's what the boss says. Slim sat down on a box across the table from George. He studied the solitaire hand that was upside down to him. Hope you get on my team, he said. His voice was very gentle. I got a pair of punks on my team that don't know a barley bag from a blue ball. You guys ever bucked any barley? Hell yes, said George. I ain't nothing to scream about, but that big bastard there can put up more grain alone than most pairs can. Lennie, who had been following the conversation back and forth with his eyes, smiled complacency at the compliment. Slim looked approvingly at George for having given the compliment. He leaned over the table and snapped the corner of a loose card. You guys travel around together? His tone was friendly. It invited confidence without demanding it. Sure, said George. We kinda look after each other. He indicated Lennie with his thumb. He ain't bright. Hell of a good worker, though. Hell of a nice fella, but he ain't bright. I've knew him for a long time. Slim looked through George and beyond him. Ain't many guys travel around together, he mused. I don't know why. Maybe everybody in the whole damn world is scared of each other. It's a lot nicer to go around with a guy, you know, said George. A powerful, big-stomached man came into the bunkhouse. His head still dripped water from the scrubbing and dousing. Hi, Slim, he said, and then stopped and stared at George and Lennie. These guys juice come, said Slim by way of introduction. Glad to meet ya, the big man said. My name's Carlson. I'm George Milton, this here's Lennie Small. Glad to meet ya, Carlson said again. He ain't very small. He chuckled softly at his joke. Ain't small at all, he repeated. Meant to ask you, Slim, how's your bitch? I seen she wasn't under your wagon this morning. She slang her pups last night, said Slim. 9 of 'em, I drowned 4 of 'em right off. She couldn't feed that many. Got 5 left, huh? Yeah, 5. I kept the biggest. What kinda dogs you think they're gonna be? I dunno, said Slim. Some kinda shepherds, I guess. That's the most kind I seen around here when she was in heat. Carlson went on, got 5 pups, huh? Gonna keep all of 'em? I dunno, have to keep 'em a while so they can drink Lulu's milk. Carlson said thoughtfully, well, look-a-here, Slim. I been thinkin'. That dog of Candy's is so goddamn old he can't hardly walk. Stinks like hell, too. Every time he comes into the bunkhouse I can smell him for 2, 3 days. Why'n't you get Candy to shoot his old dog and give him one of the pups to raise up? I can smell that dog a mile away. Got no teeth, damn near blind, can't eat. Candy feeds him milk. He can't chew nothing else. George had been staring intently at Slim. Suddenly, a triangle began to ring outside, slowly at first, and then faster and faster until the beat of it disappeared into one ringing sound. It stopped as suddenly as it had started. There she goes, said Carlson. Outside, there was a burst of voices as a group of men went by. Slim stood up slowly and with dignity. You guys better come on while they's still something to eat. Won't be nothing left in a couple of minutes. Carlson stepped back to let Slim precede him, and then the two of them went out the door. Lennie was watching George excitedly. George rumpled his cards into a messy pile. Yeah, George said, I heard him, Lennie, I'll ask him. A brown and white one, Lennie cried excitedly. Come on, let's get dinner. I don't know whether he got a brown and white one. Lennie didn't move from his bunk. You ask him right away, George, so he won't kill no more of 'em. Sure, come on now, get up on your feet. Lennie rolled off his bunk and stood up, and the two of them started for the door. Just as they reached it, Curly bounced in. You seen a girl around here? He demanded angrily. George said coldly, 'Bout half an hour ago, maybe. Well, what the hell was she doin'? George stood still, watching the angry little man. He said insultingly, she said she was lookin' for you. Curly seemed really to see George for the first time. His eyes flashed over George, took in his height, measured his reach, looked at his trim middle. Well, which way'd she go? He demanded at last. I dunno, said George. I didn't watch her go. Curly scowled at him and turning, hurried out the door. George said, You know, Lennie, I'm scared I'm gonna tangle with that bastard myself. I hate his guts. Jesus Christ, come on, they won't be a damn thing left to eat. They went out the door. The sunshine lay in a thin line under the window. From a distance, there could be heard a rattle of dishes. After a moment, the ancient dog walked lamely in through the open door. He gazed about with mild, half-blind eyes. He sniffed, and then lay down and put his head between his paws. Curly popped into the doorway again and stood looking into the room. The dog raised his head, but when Curly jerked out, the grizzled head sank to the floor again. Chapter 3, although there was evening brightness showing through the windows of the bunkhouse, inside it was dusk. Through the open door came the thuds and occasional clangs of a horseshoe game, and now and then the sound of voices raised in approval or derision. Slim and George came into the darkening bunkhouse together. Slim reached up over the card table and turned on the tin-shaded electric light. Instantly, the table was brilliant with light, and the cone of the shade threw its brightness straight downward, leaving the corners of the bunkhouse still in dusk. Slim sat down on a box and George took his place opposite. It wasn't nothing, said Slim. I would have had to drown most of 'em anyways. No need to thank me about that. George said, It wasn't much to you maybe, but it was a hell of a lot to him. Jesus Christ, I don't know how we're gonna get him to sleep in here. He'll want to sleep right out in the barn with 'em. We'll have trouble keepin' him from getting right in the box with them pups. It wasn't nothing, Slim repeated. Say, you sure was right about him. Maybe he ain't bright, but I never seen such a worker. He damn near killed his partner Buckin' Barley. There ain't nobody can keep up with him. God almighty, I never seen such a strong guy. George spoke proudly. Juice, tell Lennie what to do and he'll do it if it don't take no figuring. He can't think of nothing to do himself, but he sure can take orders. There was a clang of horseshoe on iron stake outside and a little cheer of voices. Slim moved back slightly so the light was not on his face. Funny how you and him string along together. It was Slim's calm invitation to confidence. What's funny about it? George demanded defensively. Oh, I dunno. Hardly none of the guys ever travel together. I hardly never seen two guys travel together. You know how the hands are, they just come in and get their bunk and work a month, and then they quit and go out alone. Never seem to give a damn about nobody. It juice seems kinda funny a cuckoo like him and a smart little guy like you travelin' together. He ain't no cuckoo, said George. He's dumb as hell, but he ain't crazy. And I ain't so bright neither, or I wouldn't be buckin' barley for my 50 and found. If I was bright, if I was even a little bit smart, I'd have my own little place, and I'd be bringin' in my own crops, 'stead of doin' all the work and not getting what comes up outta the ground. George fell silent. He wanted to talk. Slim neither encouraged nor discouraged him. He just sat back quiet and receptive. It ain't so funny, him and me goin' around together, George said at last. Him and me was both born in Auburn. I knowed his Aunt Clara. She took him when he was a baby and raised him up. When his Aunt Clara died, Lennie just come along with me out workin'. Got kinda used to each other after a little while. Said Slim. George looked over at Slim and saw the calm, godlike eyes fastened on him. Funny, said George. I used to have a hell of a lot of fun with used to play jokes on 'cause he was too dumb to take care of himself. But he was too dumb even to know he had a joke played on him. I had fun. Made me seem damn smart alongside of him. Why he'd do any damn thing I tall hits. If I tall him to walk over a cliff, over he'd go. That wasn't so damn much fun after a while. He never got mad about it, neither. I've beat the hell outta him, and he coulda bust every bone in my body juice with his hands, but he never lifted a finger against me. George's voice was taking on the tone of confession. Tell you what made me stop that. One day a bunch of guys was standin' around up on the Sacramento River. I was feelin' pretty smart. I turns to Lennie and says, "Jump in." And he jumps. Couldn't swim a stroke. He damn near drowned before we could get him, and he was so damn nice to me for pullin' him out. Clean forgot I told him to jump in. Well, I ain't done nothing like that no more. He's a nice fella, said Slim. Guy don't need no sense to be a nice fella. Seems to me sometimes it juice works the other way around. Take a real smart guy and he ain't hardly ever a nice fella. George stacked the scattered cards and began to lay out his solitaire hand. The shoes thudded on the ground outside. At the windows, the light of the evening still made the window squares bright. I ain't got no people, George said. I seen the guys that go around on the ranches alone. That ain't no good. They don't have no fun. After a long time they get mean. They get wantin' to fight all the time. Yeah, they get mean, Slim agreed. They get so they don't want to talk to nobody. Course Lennie's a goddamn nuisance most of the time, said George. But you get used to goin' around with a guy and you can't get rid of him. He ain't mean, said Slim. I can see Lennie ain't a bit mean. Course he ain't mean, but he gets in trouble all the time because he's so goddamn dumb. Like what happened in Weed, he stopped in the middle of turning over a card. He looked alarmed and peered over at Slim. You wouldn't tell nobody? What'd he do in Weed? Slim asked calmly. You wouldn't tell. No, course you wouldn't. What'd he do in Weed? Slim asked again. Well, he seen this girl in a red dress. Dumb bastard like he is, he wants to touch everything he likes. Just wants to feel it. So he reaches out to feel this red dress and the girl lets out a squawk, and that gets Lennie all mixed up, and he holds on 'cause that's the only thing he can think to do. Well, this girl squawks and squawks. I was juice a little bit off, and I heard all the yellin', so I comes running, and by that time, Lennie's so scared all he can think to do is juice, hold on. I socked him over the head with a fence picket to make him let go. He was so scared he couldn't let go of that dress. And he's so goddamn strong, you know. Slim's eyes were level and unwinking. He nodded very slowly. So what happens? George carefully built his line of solitaire cards. Well, that girl Rabbit's in'n tells the law she been raped. The guys in Weed start a party out to lynch Lennie. So we sit in a irrigation ditch underwater all the rest of that day. Got Ani our heads sticking oute water and up under the grass that sticks out from the side of the ditch. And that night we scrammed oute there. Slim sat in silence for a moment. Didn't hurt the girl none, huh? He asked finally. Hell no, he just scared her. I'd be scared too if he grabbed me, but he never hurt her. He juice wanted to touch that red dress like he wants to pet them pups all the time. He ain't mean, said Slim. I can tell a mean guy a mile off. Course he ain't, and he'll do any damn thing. Lennie came in through the door. He wore his blue denim coat over his shoulders like a cape, and he walked hunched way over. "Hi, Lennie," said George. "How you like the pup now?" Lennie said breathlessly. "He's brown and white juice, like I wanted." He went directly to his bunk and lay down and turned his face to the wall and drew up his knees. George put down his cards very deliberately. "Lennie," he said sharply. Lennie twisted his neck and looked over his shoulder. "Huh, what you want, George? I tell you couldn't bring that pup in here." "What pup, George?" "I ain't got no pup." George went quickly to him, grabbed him by the shoulder, and rolled him over. He reached down and picked the tiny puppy from where Lennie had been concealing it against his stomach. Lennie sat up quickly. "Give to me, George," George said. "You get right up and take this pup back to the nest. He's gotta sleep with his mother. You want to kill him? Just born last night and you take him out of the nest. You take him back or I'll tell Slim not to let you have him." Lennie held out his hands pleadingly. "Give to me, George. I'll take back. I didn't mean no harm, George. Honest, I didn't." I just wanted to pet him a little. George handed the pup to him. "All right, you get him back there quick and don't you take him out no more. You'll kill him the first thing you know." Lennie fairly scuttled out of the room. Slim had not moved. His calm eyes followed Lennie out the door. "Jesus," he said. "He's just like kid, ain't he?" "Sure, he's just like a kid. There ain't no more harm in him than a kid neither, except he's so strong. I bet he won't come in here to sleep tonight. He'd sleep right alongside that box in the barn. Well, he ain't doin' no harm out there." It was almost dark outside now. Old Candy, the swamper, came in and went to his bunk, and behind him struggled his old dog. "Hello, Slim. Hello, George. Didn't neither of you play horseshoes?" "I don't like to play ever night," said Slim. Candy went on, "Either you guys got a slug of whiskey, I got a gut ache." "I ain't," said Slim. "I'd drink it myself if I had, and I ain't got a gut ache neither." "Got a bad gut ache," said Candy. "Them God. Damn turnips give it to me. I knowed they was going to before I ever eat 'em." The thick-bodied Carlson came in out of the darkening yard. He walked to the other end of the bunkhouse and turned on the second shaded light. "Darker'n hell in here," he said. "Jesus, how that nigger can pitch shoes." "He's plenty good," said Slim. "Damn right he is," said Carlson. "He don't give nobody else a chance to win." He stopped and sniffed the air and, still sniffing, looked down at the old dog. "God almighty, that dog stinks. Get him out here, Candy. I don't know nothing that stinks as bad as an old dog. You gotta get him out." Candy rolled to the edge of his bunk. He reached over and patted the ancient dog, and he apologized. "I been around him so much I never notice how he stinks." "Well, I can't stand him in here," said Carlson. "That stink hangs around even after he's gone." He walked over with his heavy-legged stride and looked down at the dog. "Got no teeth," he said. "He's all stiff with rheumatism. He ain't no good to you, Candy. And he ain't no good to himself. Why'n't you shoot him, Candy?" The old man squirmed uncomfortably. "Well, hell, I had him so long, had him since he was a pup. I herded sheep with him," he said proudly. "You wouldn't think it to look at him now, but he was the best damn sheep dog I ever seen." George said, "I seen a guy in Weed that had an Airedale could herd sheep. Learned it from the other dogs." Carlson was not to be put off. "Look, Candy, this of dog juice suffers hisself all the time. If you was to take him out and shoot him right in the back of the head," he leaned over and pointed. "Right there, why he'd never know what hit him." Candy looked about unhappily. "No," he said softly. "No, I couldn't do that. I am too long." "He don't have no fun," Carlson insisted. "And he stinks to beat hell. Tell you what, I'll shoot him for you. Then it won't be you that does it." Candy threw his legs off his bunk. He scratched the white stubble whiskers on his cheek nervously. "I'm so used to him," he said softly. "I had him from a pup." "Well, you ain't bane kind to him keepin' him alive," said Carlson. "Look, Slim's bitch got a litter right now. I bet Slim would give you one of them PNPS to raise up, wouldn't you, Slim?" The Skinner had been studying the old dog with his calm eyes. "Yeah," he said. "You can have a pup if you want to." He seemed to shake himself free for speech. "Carl's right, Candy. That dog ain't no good to himself. I wished shoot me if I get old and a cripple." Candy looked helplessly at him, for Slim's opinions were law. "Maybe it'd hurt him," he suggested. "I don't mind talking care of him," Carlson said. "The way I'd shoot him, he wouldn't feel nothing. I'd put the gun right there." He pointed with his toe. "Right back of the head. He wouldn't even quiver." Candy looked for help from face to face. It was quite dark outside by now. A young laboring man came in. His sloping shoulders were bent forward and he walked heavily on his heels, as though he carried the invisible grain bag. He went to his bunk and put his hat on his shelf. Then he picked up a pulp magazine from his shelf and brought it to the light over the table. "Did I show you this, Slim?" he asked. "Show me what?" The young man turned to the back of the magazine, put it down on the table and pointed with his finger. "Right there, read that." Slim bent over it. "Go on," said the young man. "Read it out loud." "Dear Editor." Slim read slowly. "I read your mag for 6 years and I think it is the best on the market. I like stories by Peter Rand. I think he is a wingding. Give us more like the Dark Rider. I don't write many letters. Just thought I would tell you I think your mag is the best dime's worth I ever spent." Slim looked up questioningly. "What you want me to read that for?" Wit said. "Go on. Read the name at the bottom." Slim read, "Yours for success, William Tenner." He glanced up at Wit again. "What you want me to read that for?" Wit closed the magazine impressively. "Don't you remember Bill Termer? Worked here about 3 months ago?" Slim thought. "Little guy," he asked. "Drove a cultivator." "That's him," Wit cried. "That's the guy. You think he's the guy wrote this letter?" "I know it. Bill and me was in here one day. Bill had one of them books that just come. He was lookin' in it and he says, 'I wrote a letter. Wonder if they put it in the book.' But it wasn't there. Bill says, 'Maybe they're savin' it for later.' And that's just what they done." "There it is. Guess you're right," said Slim. "Got it right in the book." George held out his hand for the magazine. "Let's look at it." Wit found the place again, but he did not surrender his hold on it. He pointed out the letter with his forefinger. And then he went to his box shelf and laid the magazine carefully in. "I wonder if Bill's seen it," he said. "Bill and me worked in that patch of field peas. Run cultivators, both of us. Bill was a hell of a nice fella." During the conversation, Carlson had refused to be drawn in. He continued to look down at the old dog. Candy watched him uneasily. At last Carlson said, "If you want me to, I'll put the old devil out of his misery right now and get it over with. Ain't nothing left for him. Can't eat, can't see, can't even walk without hurtin'." Candy said hopefully, "You ain't got no gun." "The hell I ain't. Got a Luger, it won't hurt him none at all." Candy said, "Maybe tomorrow, Liz wait till tomorrow." "I don't see no reason for it," said Carlson. He went to his bunk, pulled his bag from underneath it and took out a Luger pistol. "Liz get it over with," he said. "We can't sleep with him stinkin' around in here." He put the pistol in his hip pocket. Candy looked a long time at Slim to try to find some reversal, and Slim gave him none. At last Candy said softly and hopelessly, "Orate take, I am." He did not look down at the dog at all. He lay back on his bunk and crossed his arms behind his head and stared at the ceiling. From his pocket, Carlson took a little leather thong. He stooped over and tied it around the old dog's neck. All the men except Candy watched him. "Come, boy. Come on, boy," he said gently. And he said apologetically to Candy, "He won't even feel it." Candy did not move nor answer him. He twitched the thong. "Come on, boy." The old dog got slowly and stiffly to his feet and followed the gently pulling leash. Slim said, "Carlson, yeah, you know what to do." "What you mean, Slim?" "Take a shovel," said Slim shortly. "Oh, sure, I get you." He led the dog out into the darkness. George followed to the door and shut the door and set the latch gently in its place. Candy lay rigidly on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Slim said loudly, "One of my lead mules got a bad hoof, got to get some tar on it." His voice trailed off. It was silent outside. Carlson's footsteps died away. The silence come into the room, and the silence lasted. George chuckled, "I bet Lennie's right out there in the barn with his pup. He won't want to come in here no more now he's got a pup." Slim said, "Candy, you can have any one of them pups you want." Candy did not answer. The silence fell on the room again. It came out of the night and invaded the room. George said, "Anybody like to play a little euchre?" "I'll play out a few with you," said Wit. They took places opposite each other at the table under the light, but George did not shuffle the cards. He rippled the edge of the deck nervously, and the little snapping noise drew the eyes of all the men in the room so that he stopped doing it. The silence fell on the room again. A minute passed and another minute. Candy lay still, staring at the ceiling. Slim gazed at him for a moment and then looked down at his hands. He subdued one hand with the other and held it down. There came a little gnawing sound from under the floor, and all the men looked down toward it gratefully. Only Candy continued to stare at the ceiling. "Sounds like there was a rat under there," said Georgia. We ought to get a trap down there. Whit broke out. What the hell's talkin' him so long? Lay out some cards, why don't you? We ain't going to get no euchre played this way. George brought the cards together tightly and studied the backs of them. The silence was in the room again. A shot sounded in the distance. The men looked quickly at the old man. Every head turned toward him. For a moment he continued to stare at the ceiling. Then he rolled slowly over and faced the wall and lay silent. George shuffled the cards noisily and dealt them. Whit drew a scoring board to him and set the pegs to start. Whit said, "I guess you guys really come here to work." "How do you mean?" George asked. Whit laughed. "Well, you come on a Friday, you got 2 days to work till Sunday." "I don't see how you figure," said George. Whit laughed again. "You do if you been around these big ranches much. Guy that wants to look over a ranch comes in Saturday afternoon. He gets Saturday tight supper and 3 meals on Sunday, and he can quit Monday mornin' after breakfast without turning his hand. But you come to work Friday noon. You got to put in a day and a half no matter how you figure." George looked at him levelly. "We're gonna stick around a while," he said. "Me and Lennie's gonna roll up a steak." The door opened quietly and the stable buck put in his head, a lean Negro head, lined with pain, the eyes patient. "Mr. Slim." Slim took his eyes from Old Candy. "Huh, oh, hello, Crooks. What's the matter? You told me to warm up tar for that mule's foot. I got it warm." "Oh, sure, Crooks, I'll come right out and put it on." "I can do it if you want, Mr. Slim." "No, I'll come do it myself." He stood up. Crooks said, "Mr. Slim?" "Yeah. That big new guy's messin' around your pups out in the barn." "Well, he ain't doin' no harm. I give him one of them pups." "Just thought I'd tell ya," said Crooks. "He's talkin' 'em out's the nest and handlin' them. That won't do them no good." "He won't hurt 'em," said Slim. "I'll come along with you now." George looked up. "If that crazy bastard's foolin' around too much, Juice, kick him out, Slim." Slim followed the stable buck out of the room. George dealt and Whit picked up his cards and examined them. "Seen the new kid yet?" he asked. "What kid?" George asked. "Why, Curly's new wife." "Yeah, I seen her." "Well, ain't she a Lulu?" "I ain't seen that much of her," said George. Whit laid down his cards impressively. "Well, stick around and keep your eyes open. You'll see plenty. She ain't concealin' nothing. I never seen nobody like her. She got the eye goin' all the time on everybody. I bet she even gives the stable buck the eye. I don't know what the hell she wants." George asked casually, "Been any trouble since she got here?" It was obvious that Whit was not interested in his cards. He laid his hand down and George scooped it in. George laid out his deliberate solitaire hand 7 cards and 6 on top and 5 on top of those. Whit said, "I see what you mean. No, they ain't been nothing yet. Curly's got yellow jackets in his drawers, but that's all so far. Ever time the guys is around she shows up. She's lookin' for Curly, or she thought she left Sotnithin layin' around and she's lookin' for it. Seems like she can't keep away from guys, and Curly's pants is just crawlin' with ants, but they ain't nothing come of it yet." George said, "She's gonna make a mess. They's gonna be a bad mess about her. She's a jailbait all set on the trigger. That Curly got his work cut out for him. Ranch with a bunch of guys on it ain't no place for a girl, specially like her." Whit said, "If you got ideas, you ought to come in town with us guys tomorrow night." "Why?" "What's doin'? Juice, the usual thing. We go into old Sussy's place. Hell of a nice place. Old Sussy's a laugh always crackin' jokes. Like she says when we come up on the front porch law's Saturday night. Sussy opens the door and then she yells over her shoulder, 'Get your coats on, girls, here comes the sheriff.' She never talks dirty, neither. Got 5 girls there." "What's it set you back?" George asked. 2.5. You can get a shot for 2 hits. Sussy got nice chairs to set in, too. If a guy don't want to flop, why he can just set in the chairs and have a couple or 3 shots and pass the time of day, and Sussy don't give a damn. She ain't rushin' guys through and kickin' 'em out if they don't want to flop. "Might go in and look the joint over," said George. "Sure, come along. It's a hell of a lot of fun her crackin' jokes all the time. Like she says one time, she says, 'I've knew people that if they got a rag rug on the floor and a Cupid doll lamp on the phonograph, they think they're running a parlor house.' That's Clara's house she's talkin' about. And Sussy says, 'I know what you boys want,' she says. 'My girls is clean,' she says, 'and there ain't no water in my whiskey,' she says. 'If any you guys want to look at a Cupid doll lamp and take your own chance gettin' burned, why you know where to go.' And she says, there's guys around here walkin' bow-legged 'cause they like to look at a Cupid doll lamp. George asked, Clara runs the other house, huh? Yeah, said Whit. We don't never go there. Clara gets $3 a crack and 35 cents a shot, and she don't crack no jokes. But Sussie's place is clean and she got nice chairs. Don't let no goo-goos in, neither. Me and Lennie's rollin' up a steak, said George. I might go in and set and have a shot, but I ain't puffin' out no 2.5. Well, a guy got to have some fun sometime, said Whit. The door opened, and Lennie and Carlson came in together. Lennie crept to his bunk and sat down, trying not to attract attention. Carlson reached under his bunk and brought out his bag. He didn't look at old Candy, who still faced the wall. Carlson found a little cleaning rod in the bag and a can of oil. He laid them on his bed and then brought out the pistol, took out the magazine, and snapped the loaded shell from the chamber. Then he fell to cleaning the barrel with the little rod. When the ejector snapped, Candy turned over and looked for a moment at the gun before he turned back to the wall again. Carlson said casually, Curly been in yet? No, said Whit. What's eatin' on Curly? Carlson squinted down the barrel of his gun. Lookin' for his old lady. I seen him going round and round outside. Whit said sarcastically, he spends half his time lookin' for her, and the rest of the time she's lookin' for him. Curly burst into the room excitedly. Any you guys seen my wife? He demanded. She ain't been here, said Whit. Curly looked threateningly about the room. Where the hell's Slim? Went out in the barn, said George. He was gonna put some tar on a split hoof. Curly's shoulders dropped and squared. How long ago'd he go? 5-10 minutes. Curly jumped out the door and banged it after him. Whit stood up. I guess maybe I'd like to see this, he said. Curly's just spoilin', or he wouldn't start for Slim. And Curly's handy, goddamn handy. Got in the finals for the Golden Gloves. He got newspaper clippings about it. He considered. But Juice, the same, he better leave Slim alone. Nobody don't know what Slim can do. Think Slim's with his wife, don't he? Said George. Looks like it, Whit said. Course Slim ain't, least I don't think Slim is. But I like to see the fuss if it comes off. Come on, Liz, go. George said. I'm stayin' right here. I don't want to get mixed up in nothing. Lennie and me got to make a steak. Carlson finished the cleaning of the gun and put it in the bag and pushed the bag under his bunk. I guess I'll go out and look her over, he said. Old Candy lay still, and Lennie, from his bunk, watched George cautiously. When Whit and Carlson were gone and the door closed after them, George turned to Lennie. What you got on your mind? I ain't done nothing, George. Slim says I better not pet them pups so much for a while. Slim says it ain't good for them, so I come right in. I been good, George. I coulda told you that, said George. Well, I wasn't hurtin' 'em none. I juice had mine in my lap pettin' it. George asked, did you see Slim out in the barn? Sure I did. He told me I better not pet that pup no more. Did you see that girl? You mean Curly's girl? Yeah, did she come in the barn? No, anyways I never seen her. You never seen Slim talkin' to her? She ain't been in the barn. Okay, said George. I guess them guys ain't gonna see no fight, if there's any fight in Lennie.